This is a narco tunnel. It's dark, dangerous, but it's highly lucrative.
Across Colombia, strange stories began to spread about secret tunnels, hidden rooms, and boats that could disappear under the sea. People living in that area talked about houses with steel doors and underground passages leading who knows where.
It's moving at the speed of electrons.
And what's being moved through this tunnel is highly likely.
When the police started digging deeper, what they found shocked even them. Every tunnel, every submersible, told part of a much bigger story about how far some people would go to move things without anyone seeing them. But if these tunnels were only the beginning, what darker network still lies buried beneath Colombia's quiet streets today? Where the ground hides the trade. Bogotá has neighborhoods with narrow streets and small blocks. One area that police and local people talk about is El Bronx. For years, the place had open illegal substance markets and many reports of violence. Local shops and street vendors shared tips with officers when they saw strange activities during the nights and on weekends. The National Police of Colombia and the Dirección de Investigación Criminal e Interpol led searches after neighbors gave specific locations. Officers found small basement rooms under houses and in some commercial buildings. In one basement, agents opened a concrete hatch that led down to a dirt passage. The passage was shallow and short. It had wooden supports and a narrow walkway. The space led to a room that held sacks wrapped in heavy plastic. They recorded the scene with photographs and videos. That evidence became part of the case file held by the Office of the Attorney General. Inside other buildings, police found scales, plastic sheeting, and tools used to pack products. Several cell phones were seized along with handwritten lists that listed delivery times and street blocks. Officers found small amounts of cash and a few short firearms in concealed niches. Forensic teams tested the plastic packaging and matched fibers to the bags found in the basements. Phone records showed repeated calls between known sellers and these safe houses at night. Neighbors gave statements that helped build the case. One shopkeeper said he saw men carrying large bags through a back door at almost midnight. A landlord told investigators that a tenant paid a huge amount of money for rent and that the unit always had strange visitors. Some people who lived in the blocks refused to speak at first for fear of reprisals. Prosecutors then arranged protection for key witnesses and moved forward with search warrants. Judges issued judicial orders after the prosecutors presented phone logs, witness reports, and surveillance footage. Police units entered with the warrants and secured the premises. After the arrests, the Office of the Attorney General opened formal charges for illegal trade and for forming criminal bands. Some of the detained were mid-level sellers and couriers. Others faced charges for providing safe houses and for handling money for the group. Property seizures followed the arrests. Judges ordered that certain houses be sealed as evidence. Courts then handled the question of how to manage seized assets while the trials moved forward. In some cases, judges allowed temporary use of seized buildings for social services until the court resolved ownership in the criminal case. Investigators traced some payments through informal networks. Cash flows moved through local collectors who paid pocket money to couriers. Where banks were involved, investigators looked for unusual deposits or withdrawals. That work led to additional subpoenas for financial records and to more arrests of people accused of laundering money. Police came to know that these tunnels were not technical engineering projects. The work used basic tools, a few helpers, and labor. Construction always took place at night to avoid being noticed. That low-tech approach meant even small criminal cells could make short passages and secret rooms. The authorities increased patrols after the raids. Plainclothes officers and uniformed patrols watched the areas for signs of retaliation or for attempts to reopen new sites. City officials met with residents to explain the progress of the investigations and to collect more tips. Social workers also visited families who lived near the seized sites to check on children and to support those who lost their rented homes. Evidence packages relied on physical traces and on digital records. Forensic photos, fibers from packages, and prints on boxes helped create the link between the safe houses and the street sellers. Phone logs showed a pattern of contact at specific hours. Witness statements described the flow of people and the arrival of heavy sacks. Court hearings are scheduled dates to study the evidence. Defense lawyers challenged parts of the case, while prosecutors added more proof. Some defendants were released on bail when the court considered their role. Other suspects remained in custody while trial evidence accumulated. These operations showed that those passages served as short-term logistics points. They move products for a short distance and reduce what sellers must carry on the streets. The packages are a part of local supply chains that include couriers, street sellers, and storage points within a few blocks of each other. Officials said the work would continue and that new leads would be checked quickly. Police asked residents to report strange repairs or heavy traffic at odd hours. That collaboration helped find several other small sites that linked to the same groups. The names of accused individuals and the exact court records are part of public files and will appear in trial documents as the cases proceed. But what if those small sites were only the beginning? What if the real operation was hiding beneath the very streets of Cali? Bunkers of Cali. Houses with certain doors and tunnels. Cali sits in a valley with crowded neighborhoods. In several parts of the city, small houses became bases for sales and storage. Locals and reporters described a few of these spots as fortified hideouts. These buildings looked normal from the street. Inside, they held rooms for packing, stores of product, and narrow passages that linked basements or yards. Officers from the Metropolitan Police of Cali led raids after months of work. Investigators used tips, surveillance, and phone records to build cases. Judges issued search orders when prosecutors from the Office of the Attorney General showed enough evidence. Police officers entered at dawn and found rooms set up to move goods without using the main roads. Inside one house, police officers found a sealed door behind a wardrobe. The door opened to a short corridor that led to a windowless room. The room had stacks of plastic-wrapped packages and some sheets used for drying and packing. A table had scales and small metal scoops. Several mobile phones sat on a shelf with writings showing street names and times for drops. Another house had an underground link to the next building. The tunnel was low and narrow. Wooden beams kept the soil from falling in. That passage allowed workers to move loads without being seen on the main street. Movers carried small bags through the passage at night. Neighbors later told officers about the traffic and the vans that left at odd hours. Officers also found makeshift labs in a few houses. Simple equipment allowed workers to cut and process the product for sale. Containers and bottles used for mixing were stacked in a corner. Some rooms had electronic scales, plastic bags, and labels. The setup showed work done in short bursts and moved before larger police operations. Seized items included cash, small firearms, radios, and paperwork. Investigators photographed and catalogued each item for the court. Forensic teams tested materials and collected fingerprints. Phone records helped place suspects near the houses at times when deliveries occurred. Landlords and owners often claimed they did not know how tenants used the houses. Some rented units for cash. Investigators traced payments to middlemen who handled the collections. Where bank records existed, the Office of the Attorney General sought subpoenas. Those financial traces led to more arrests of people who moved money between neighborhoods. Neighbors gave crucial tips in many cases. Grocery owners and drivers reported patterns that looked strange. One taxi driver told officers about a corner where many people arrived late at night and left in small groups. That tip matched phone data and helped secure a warrant. Some witnesses feared speaking out and asked for protection. Prosecutors arranged for guarded testimony in key trials. After the raids, the city placed checkpoints and increased patrols. Plainclothes officers watched for attempts to reopen houses used for trade. Traffic checks aimed to stop vans that might be moving products. Local police worked with national units when they saw links to larger groups. Courts handled the seized properties as part of criminal files. Judges ordered houses to be sealed and set hearings for ownership and asset control. Temporary custody for children and support for displaced residents followed the raids. Social agencies registered affected families and tracked claims related to the seized homes. Investigations named groups and suspected leaders when evidence showed links beyond local sellers. Prosecutors built files that listed roles for each arrested person. Court papers showed charges for illegal trade, illegal possession of weapons, and forming criminal bands, where evidence proved coordination. Police also froze bank accounts when they found transfers linked to the bunkers. Freezing assets aimed to stop the flow of money that funded rents and local pay. Financial investigators then traced other accounts and shell payments to find contacts who worked as lenders or paymasters. After the intensive raids, some neighborhoods reported fewer visible street sales. New sites then sometimes appeared in other blocks. Officials said continued monitoring and quick response to tips remained the main way to find the next bunkers. Some owners cooperated and gave statements to investigators. Local news named streets and neighborhoods where raids happened and published statements from police and prosecutors online this month. But as city streets quieted, whispers grew louder from the hills. What were authorities about to uncover beneath the earth? Hidden galleries in the hills, Yaragua and the mining link. Outside the cities, the land changes and people work with what the hills give them. In Buritica, in the department of Antioquia, authorities found a long gallery called Yaragua. Local reports said the gallery had been used for years by armed groups and by illegal miners. The site sits near formal mining operations run by the Zijin mining group and near small camps where informal miners worked with simple tools. Police and soldiers entered Yaragua after months of planning. The National Police of Colombia and the National Army led the recovery with support from the Office of the Attorney General. They found tunnels with wooden supports and carved chambers. Inside the galleries, officers found drums of fuel, pumps, and makeshift lighting. They also found explosives and detonators stored in secure spots. The presence of explosives raised the risk for an explosion in case the officers entered, and so it required careful work by specialists. Investigators said the galleries served more than one purpose. Some parts were used to store extracted gold and to hold supplies for miners. Other parts acted as logistics points for groups that protected the work and moved goods out of the hills. Witnesses in that area told reporters that armed men guarded entrances and checked the people who came and went. Those guards collected payments and set rules for how miners could work and when they must give a share of gold as a fee. The mix of mining and trafficking created a flow of funds. Money from gold sales helped pay for food, tools, and the guards. That cash also helped to buy fuel and to pay local suppliers. Investigators found evidence of payments collected at small points along different roads. Financial traces sometimes showed informal collectors who moved cash by hand. Where electronic transfers existed, prosecutors sought bank records to trace links to others in the chain. Environmental damage was visible at the site. Rivers near the galleries showed signs of contamination from mercury and chemicals used in informal processing. Farmers and residents reported changes in watercolor and fish deaths downstream. Experts who visited the area described loose soil and collapsed galleries that threatened nearby houses and farming plots. That damage added a public safety and health concern to the criminal charges. The recovery operation led to arrests and seizures. Authorities took control of entrances, dismantled makeshift camps, and removed fuel drums and explosive materials. Some detained individuals faced charges for illegal mining, illegal possession of explosives, and links to criminal organizations. The Office of the Attorney General opened cases that combined environmental crimes and organized crime counts, where evidence linked the acts. Local company officials and municipal leaders described clashes over control of the tunnels. The Zijin mining group reported that illegal miners had moved into parts of the concession and that security incidents had taken place. Company statements said they had lost control of some tunnels and demanded government support to secure the area. Municipal leaders then asked for more coordinated operations to restore order and safety. Special forces used maps and local guides to move through the galleries. They recorded the structure and seized materials that gave clues about how the galleries were used. Some rooms held sacks and small containers with traces of processed ore. That evidence helped prosecutors build cases that show the link between extraction and the armed groups that protected the work. The presence of armed groups in mining zones is a pattern in several regions. In Buritica, the mix of organized crime and informal miners created a complex landscape where control can shift quickly. The recovery of Yaragua showed how a single gallery linked illegal mining and illicit financial activity. Operations remain specialized. After the operation, officials secured entrances and set up monitoring. Judicial measures froze assets and began the legal process to assign responsibility. The work continues as authorities collect more evidence and as courts process the charges against those detained. But while authorities battled underground on land, another secret front was forming beneath the waves. What were they hiding there? Sea and soil. Why Colombia uses tunnels and submersibles? Colombia sits between producing zones and distant buyers. Traffickers choose routes that lower cost and risk. In city zones, short tunnels help move small loads quickly. In rural zones, galleries serve storage and mining needs. On the coast, traffickers use low-profile vessels and semi-submersibles to move large loads across oceans. Semi-submersibles and low-profile vessels are often built from fiberglass or steel and look like fishing boats. Builders cut a central hold for cargo and seal the deck. Other craft sit mostly submerged with only a small exhaust or antenna above the waves. These designs reduce visibility to patrols and aircraft. Construction usually happens in remote shipyards or in hidden workshops along riverbanks. Skilled labor is needed for hull work, engines, and navigation systems. Groups such as the Clan del Golfo and several dissident fronts have used seacraft and river routes. The choice depends on where buyers wait and how much money the group can spend. Large loads go by sea, where one trip can carry many kilos. Smaller loads move by land in many trips. Rivers and small ports act as transfer points. Local boats move product from camp landings to larger vessels that cross the ocean. Building and operating these crafts requires finance. Money comes from local sales, from illegal mining, and from profits moved through informal networks. Those funds pay for hulls, diesel, engines, satellite gear, and the labor to build and sail. Sometimes, forced labor or people paid little are used to build parts in hidden yards. That lowers cost and speeds production. Detection is hard at sea and in rivers. Weather, long coastlines, and remote coves make patrols slow. Traffickers test new methods to avoid sensors. Recent reports show an unmanned semi-submersible fitted with satellite gear and cameras. Officials suggest it was a trial run. No illegal substance were found on that craft. The fact that traffickers test unmanned craft shows evolving methods for a lower risk for crews. Law enforcement has had several major seizures that show how the networks work. A multinational operation in late 2024 reported the capture of many tons of prohibited substance and several semi-submersible vessels. Smaller seizures occur more often, including boats found with hundreds or thousands of kilos. The National Navy of Colombia and coastal units coordinate with international allies and specialized U.S. federal agencies to exchange intelligence and oversee critical maritime routes. Stopping sea routes often means targeting supply chains on land. Authorities try to find shipyards where hulls are built and warehouses where parts are stored. Intercepting payments and tracking fuel deliveries also helps locate networks. International operations sometimes track shipments of parts and engines that pass through ports and are used to build craft. The use of submersibles and low-profile vessels is linked to demand abroad and to the geography of Colombia. Long coastlines, river systems, and remote beaches give traffickers options. When patrols close one route, groups move to another. That mobility forces a mix of naval patrols, intelligence work, and cooperation among countries. When officers seize a vessel, they inspect its structure and its log of movements when available. Forensic work on engines and parts can show where components came from. Phone records and financial traces help link owners and builders to operators. Arrests often follow months of surveillance and work by investigators. These routes are costly to run. A successful long-range trip can earn the traffickers large profits. Losses from seizures can be heavy, but groups plan trips so that the profits from a single delivery cover many losses. Wider international work that tracks finance and parts shipments aims to make construction and operation more expensive and riskier for traffickers. Authorities publish reports after major operations regularly now. From tunnels carved beneath city streets to submersibles vanishing beneath the waves, Colombia's hidden networks keep evolving. But if this is what authorities have found, what secrets still remain buried or drifting out there? What do you think investigators will uncover next? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us for the next discovery.